Is it recording?
Yeah, it's recording. Let's roll.
Good morning, you guys, and welcome to our show. Today with us, we have a very dear friend and client of ours, Miss Melanie O'Connor. She officially joined Aaron and Suri in the Inner Circle back in October of 2020. She's a professional, a wife, and a mother of 3 to Samuel, Isabel, and Jovi. I love those names, by the way. And though she's a therapist by trade, she's also an avid cycler who cycles around 100 miles per week when it's warmer up in Delaware. As if that doesn't make her badass enough yet, on August 23rd of this year, Melanie will be a 12-year cancer survivor to multiple myeloma. And on top of it all, even though she was diagnosed with lupus back in November, she's been kicking ass and taking names and have already dropped 32 pounds and 10 inches overall. You guys, let's give it up to Melanie O'Connor.
People are like, why are your hands up?
What is this? For all the badassery.
The butt-asseries?
So, my first question to you is, when did you first realize that you were a badass?
I mean, in my younger years, I would say I thought I was badass because I played every sport and I excelled at it. And, when I was in high school and college, I really did think I was a badass. And I was, but it was definitely more superficial, right? It was about what I was doing on a field or what I was doing on a court, which is great, right? Like, it had significance in my teens and my 20s. But, I would say that as an adult now, I'm 46 now. And so badass has a whole new meaning to me. I would say probably within the last 3 months, I really realized my full potential. And it's because I'm really on a path to living my authentic life. And so to me, that you can't be any more badass than living authentically.
So tell us a little bit about the new meaning to your badass. What is the new meaning of that?
The new meaning for me, again, is really just being on this journey, and really having some things that have happened over the past, year and a half that have made me look at my life differently. And I had what I perceived as a very great life, right? I was successful at my job. I was happily married. I had great kids. I still have they're still great kids. Not I had great kids. I have great kids. My wife and I lived a really good life. And to, outsiders, it looked fantastic. And then something shifted a year and a half ago, and it really made me look at what again, I come back to my authentic self, what that meant. And it was a process, right? I had to go through hurts and pains and awkwardness and, I would call them a lot of trials and tribulations over the last 14 months to really think about what it authentically meant to be me. Because, and I'm sure I'm not any different than anyone else, when you're in a loving relationship and, you have kids, you get consumed by all of that, right? And in that consumption, you tend to lose yourself and your individuality. And it's not that that's necessarily bad. It's just that you get pulled away from who you authentically are because you get stuck in the cycle of life, right? And you become very content with that. And you sometimes forget about what it is that makes you tick, right? Because now you're ticking together. And unless you're willing to kind of sit down and do that work together, then it just becomes a part of a cycle that keeps on rolling. And so, full disclosure, and talking, if I'm going to talk about, things that are tough, my wife and I, we separated about 14 months ago. And, it hit hard, right? Who doesn't that hit hard for? And it took me a while to get out of the hurt of it and start looking for, it was like, okay, I can't do anything right now to change that happened, but what can I do for myself to make me a better self, right? And so because I couldn't control all of what was happening in our relationship, the only thing I could do was control what was happening for me.
So at what point did you consciously realize that, okay, like something's got to change, because like when you're spinning like on the rat race of life, it's just like you're so consumed by it. Like, was it a specific experience or situation that brought that to your consciousness?
It was really it was really the separation. And again, my wife and I have a great relationship still. We're trying to work on things, we're trying to figure it out. And I think I've said this to you guys individually, and I think I said this live. Like, I have thanked my wife for doing what she did, not because I wanted to be separate from her, but because it forced me to really take a look at myself and work on me, making me a better me, so that if we can find our way back to one another, I really can fill our cup, right? So I'm working on filling my cup, and hopefully, that leads to filling our cup. And so, that was a pivotal moment for me, because it was either break down and lose it, or figure it the fuck out and keep it moving. And, I have 3 kids, so losing it is not an option, right? And I went through 2 months of like, God, what am I gonna do? But then it was like, okay, well, what can I start doing for myself? And my first kind of introduction into helping myself was Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. Okay, that book is such a pivotal book for me. I have 4 pivotal books in this process, but I'm going to start with that one. That one was the first one, right? Because Brene Brown is, the ish, right? She's got some great shit to say, and really thinking about that vulnerability word, right? When you think about vulnerability, when I thought about vulnerability prior to reading that, to me, vulnerability equaled weakness, right? And after reading that and understanding what such strength it means to be vulnerable, and how it leads us to more connectedness to not only ourselves, but the people around us, our communities, you want to talk about being a badass, be vulnerable, right? Show your vulnerabilities so that you can be more authentic in the process. Like, key one, being vulnerable, is being badass, because you can't be badass if you're not vulnerable.
Oof.
True.
Ooh, I got it. Oof. I got it. Oof.
The highest honor.
The highest honor.
That is so true. And that's why, you guys, we always tell you, lean in. True. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the inner circle, but you brought up 4 pivotal books. So shame on us if we don't talk about the other 3. Would you mind mentioning those?
Sure. So that was the first one. And then the second one is Loving What Is by Byron Katie.
Oh.
Right? The 4 questions. Is this true? Can I know it's absolutely true? How do I react to this thought? And what would I be without this thought? Right? And you can apply that to a negative thought that you have. And it's really about, we're always trying to change our perception of what reality is. Like, why do we do that? Why are we trying to change it? Instead of just accepting that, yes, this is our reality. So, I was entranced by just the topic of it, because I was like, I was kind of in that middle part of my sadness kind of coming out of it. And I was like, ooh, loving what is this? The title just captured me. But then, Byron Katie talks about the work, and that is the work, right? Think of a negative thought, ask yourself, and do the work, write it down. I can't tell you how many times I wrote down the same thought and did the work over and over. Like, is this really true? How do I know? Like, that's the big one. How do I know this is really true, right? Because we do a lot of assuming, right? That's just a part of our natural process. It's easy to assume things, but that second question, in Sarit's word, is an oof for me. Like, well, how do I absolutely know that this thought is true? And then how do I react to it? And then the other oof is, well, what would I be without this thought, right? Like, if I didn't have this negative thought, what would I be, right? Would I be the opposite of it? And then how would it, this is not a word, but I'm gonna use it. How would it disencumber me from the heaviness that the thought has for me, right? So it's just, doing that work is so, if you feel like you're in a rut where you're thinking those negative thoughts, and even if you're not in a rut, right? Negative thoughts creep up in our heads all the time, right? Think about, like, this morning when I was doing burn zone, those damn 1,000 like lunges, lunges are not my favorite, right? The lunge and the kick. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't do all of these, right? That was my initial thought. Like, there's no way my knee is going to handle all of these. And, it's easy for me because I know the 4 questions, and then I start just going through them. Well, is this true? No, it's not really true, but I'm giving myself an out right now. And so I just work myself through those every time I have that kind of thought. And I got through them. It hurt. Did I do them as fast as you guys did? Hell no. But I did them and I got through them. So that book was the second pivotal book for me. The third one came in when I joined you guys in the inner circle, and that's the 4 agreements. And pretty much a lot of people in here have read the 4 agreements and have their own interpretation of what it means to them. But here, my takeaways are this, right? The first thing is, don't stop being in judgment, mostly of yourself, right? Don't be in judgment of yourself, and don't be in judgment of others. And then have a strong sense of who you are, right? If you have a strong sense of who you are, then those negative emotions or those negative thoughts that you think people are thinking don't come in. So the anger, the sadness, the envy, the jealousy, right? If you have a strong sense of who you are, those thoughts kind of just tend to, melt away. And then the third thing is, clearly communicate, right? Which goes to, don't make assumptions. If you clearly communicate and you ask questions, then you never have to assume anything, because you're taking care of that. And then the last thing, right, is live your life to your fullest potential, right? Live to that. There is no ceiling, but live to the sky, right? And so those are the 4 things that I got out of the 4 agreements. So that was right in the beginning. So that was right when I got my diagnosis, because I felt like I couldn't do a lot of the physical activity. And that's when I really started delving into the mind work. And I'm sure we'll talk about the mind work as we kind of go along. But that's when I started to kind of make that shift. And that was the first book that I kind of got into when I started doing that. And then the last book is A Path Made Clear. Now, I don't, The Path Made Clear is amazing because you get so much from so many people, but really to me, the end game is like, we're told so often about who we should be and how we should live, right? From outside people, if you start from your parents, your spouse, your friends, right? Like everybody has this like, thought process about how you're supposed to live, right? And so it's a really great journey book about, how you move from that to what you really feel in your heart you should be doing. And so it's a really neat progression, right? Like talks about, planting the seeds, and then you have roots, and then you hear like the whispers from people outside, and then then there's some like dark periods there, right? The clouds, because it goes in progression. I'm actually quoting what the chapters are. So the clouds, like when you start hearing people saying, oh, what are you doing? Those are the clouds. And then, then you start laying out like a road map of how you get to where you want to be. And then you have the road in front of you. And then there's always a climb, right? Whenever you're trying to do something different, there's gonna be a climb there, right? Like there's a hill. And then it's the give and the reward, right? Like at the end of if you look for it, right? And this is one of the things that really it sticks with me all the time because, I have had, several adversities throughout my life, but I feel like it's been piled on in the last, couple of years a little bit. Is there's always a gift and a lesson. And that book, at the end of that book, is really profound in the way people speak about the gifts and the lessons. So those are the 4 books that really pivotal for me.
My favorite question from Byron is that last 4th one, who am I without this thought? Because it's your opportunity to literally break the chains and decide you are somebody else. Decide you are who you want to be.
Right.
So freeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go back to October 2020. You joined the Inner Circle. Why did you join it? How did you hear about it in the first place?
Okay, so, not gonna lie, I was a lurker for a little bit.
Who's been a lurker? I see some of the ones who are like the most engaged now, and 4 Inner Circle hands I saw went up.
Yeah, right. Like here, I would just, click on your guys' video on Facebook and it would make me laugh, right? Like it was informative, but really it was entertaining as well. So I just kept listening and lurking. And then it was, okay, like I need to do something, right? I need to be a bigger part of this than just watching, videos, which are great, but and you guys have a lot of great programs, right? You have the TKC and you have the Raw and you have the Rise Above. And to me, actually, what? I think I signed up for I think I bought the Burn Zone one. And then I got a call from Tammy. And she was like, hey, I saw you, you signed up for the Burn Zone. She was just telling me about all the programs. And I was like, and I knew where I needed to be, right? There was no question, right? Like I'm not, the other ones are fantastic and they're great. And you have them because people have different needs, right? People have different things that they need at certain times in their process. And to me, there was no other place that felt more at home for me and that I could get the most out of than the Inner Circle. So I jumped right into the Inner Circle. I knew that I needed that knew I needed the support that the inner circle gives. So I just jumped in. That was October 28th.
October 28th.
Yep.
Some things you never forget. Okay, so I mean, take us through your journey in the inner circle, because you've been through some, like,
I want to know why she thought that that was the place for her. Like, why was the inner circle the place for you?
I think so I call myself an extroverted introvert, right? So in my job, I'm constantly talking to people, right? So I expend all of that kind of like, I call it outward energy at my job, right? And so when I'm home, I tend to stick to my family and myself, which is fine, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. But it also didn't give me, it's not that I have friends, right? But because I exhausted all that energy, I didn't spend a whole lot of time with them. And, that's my own thing. I just wanted my own space. And so you kind of lose that sense of community. And that's what the inner circle is all about, right? Like, I mean, yes, there's the coaching, which is fantastic. And there's, you get the burn zones that you get with it, and they're fantastic. But really what the core of the inner circle is being in a group just like this every week where we have that sense of community and that support. And I knew that's what I needed for myself at the time. I knew that being a part of kind of that intense community was what I needed.
Yeah. What's interesting is that I feel like, yes, though most people who go into the inner circle want weight loss, what they really want is a life change.
Well, I mean, from my first call, right? Like my first call was all about weight loss, right? We talked about how many diets I had tried and blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting, right? Because when you're in that first call, so I'm in the second round of the IC. I will be in a third round of the IC, right? And the difference between my first call and my second call, like when you watch them back, is completely different, right? Because it is, when you first come into this program, it's really about, God, I want to lose this weight, right? Which is great, right? Like who doesn't want to lose weight? But then you realize that, I realized that I was doing it wrong and I was doing it backward, right? Because there were so many things that I needed to fix internally that I thought fixing my outside would do that, right? If I liked the way that I looked from the outside, then it would make everything feel better on the inside. And what I learned is that the total opposite is true, that I had to fix the inside parts of me, and the outside parts of me have followed in ways that I didn't even think that were possible. It really wasn't even conscious for me, right? I've been on a scale maybe 3 times in the entire time that I've been in the inner circle. So I wasn't consciously aware of it until like I did hop on the scale, because I look at myself every day. And it wasn't until I got a little bit of FOMO from the end of the raw transformation that I was like, well, let me see where I'm at, right? Like, let me see what's happening here. And so really doing the mind work, and there is a lot of it, there was a lot of muddle to get through, but doing that has my body has just followed, it's coming along with me. So, if there's one thing that I can say about, if there's people that are new or that they haven't really thought about it in terms of, if they're feeling stuck about weight loss, is that it so profoundly hits for me how much doing the work on your mind and the inside impacts how your body is going to be on the outside, right? And that's not to, like, we can all do crash diets. We've all done them. We've all lost weight. We've all, dropped 10 pounds in 7 days. Like, we've all done that before. We've all been a victim, and I say a victim very confidently, right? Because they're just short-term fixes, and I've done them all, and I've been successful in them all. But for true long-term health, right? Weight loss is a byproduct of health, right? So for true long-term health, you got to do the inside work.
Amen. So knowing what you know now, okay, you've mentioned people are losing weight and they're doing it backwards. How is mainstream society doing weight loss backwards from what you know?
If you just look at like simple, keto always gets picked on. So I'll even do other ones, like let's do like a Nutrisystem, right? I'm going to send you these meals 7 days a week and you eat them and you're going to lose weight. Great, right? Well, that's fantastic, right? we all want that quick thing, and it's fantastic, right? I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do anything. I just get my meal right here. But it doesn't teach you anything. It teaches you that I'm going to have this meal in front of me and I'll eat it and I'm going to lose weight. But how sustainable is that, right? When you talk about like weight loss and health and sustainability, it doesn't teach you all the things you need to know. So if you're, having a meal delivered for 4 months and then you're like, oh, I lost 25 pounds. It's fantastic. You know what? I'm going to stop being on Nutrisystem because I've already lost my 25 pounds. Well, you didn't learn anything in the process. So then you just go back to what you did anyway, because you don't know any better. And here you are. So, to me, it's backwards because there's no accountability to what you're doing, right? Because they have all the accountability for you, just sending you the meal. Yes, you have to eat it, but if somebody's sending you food, you're eating it. There's no accountability. There's no thought process in it. There's no learning. There's nothing. And so, there's no way that you can sustain that if you don't learn all the tools and the things necessary for sustainability. So that's why I think that, these, get skinny quick, melt away 50 pounds in 4 weeks if you take this pill or whatever. Everybody's had them come across their screen. There's very little accountability, and there's no teaching in it, right? You have to do work to get what you want, right? There's no freebies in life, right? They're just not. And so, to me, I consider those freebies. So you have to be, willing to, that's right. Shauna said, you better work. You got to work, right? To get where you want to be. And you don't have to do that with mainstream stuff.
So you would say, and you would confirm, you did not learn anything doing Nutrisystem aside from the fact that is not going to work long term, right?
Learned that they can ship food through the mail to you.
So would you call that a waste of money or a very expensive lesson?
Both.
Okay.
Well, especially if you're trying to find the lessons and stuff, right? It is a very expensive waste of money. When you think about, does it give you a result? Sure. Right. But if I wanted a result that just lasted for the 4 months that I was on it, I don't know. Right. Like, is it, I think people certainly go into it thinking that they're going to have lifetime results. Who doesn't? Right. If I'm spending this money and I'm getting this product, well, how come it's not lasting my entire life? So absolutely. It's just, and it's, it's a shame because it's also a waste of time. Think about eating Nutrisystem for 4 months. How boring, right? Who wants to eat meals out of a plastic bowl for 4 months? Like, food is fantastic, right? Food is flavorful, right? Food is medicine. Food is great, right? We talk about that all the time. Like, the way that, you guys approach food intake, like, just because you are trying to become healthy doesn't mean that food has to be boring and not tasteful, right? But that stuff is like, it's the worst ever, right? It's like food in a cardboard box. But man, learning how to eat the right way using what already exists. You don't have to pay somebody to send you food. You can just make your own. And that in itself is a lesson, right? How to do that food maneuvering. So you guys make it very easy, right? It's a very simple process. It's almost as easy as Nutrisystem, except it tastes 1,000 times better, and it's your own stuff, right? It's your own creation, right? And in that process, you learn how to do all of those things, right? You learn, what good foods are, right? I mean, what's easier than red, yellow, and green, right? I mean, we look at that our entire lives from when we're little. Oh, look at the red light, mommy. Oh, look at the, green light. It's very simple, right? How much more simpler is it than red, yellow, and green when it comes to food? So, it's just, that's how I feel about it.
I love all of that, and it's so true. And I think that the most difficult thing for somebody who learns about what we do for the first time is that it seems too simple. It's too easy. It can't work. It's not a lab algorithm. Simple means effective, and something effective, leads to results. Now, what's interesting is that yesterday I was like, okay, send me your bio. And one of the things that you sent me in your bio is your age, which I loved, because like most women get so offended, like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about my age. And like, I didn't even ask you for it, but you're like, I'm going to give it to you anyways, which tells me that you take a lot of pride in it. So you're 46 years old. Okay. So a lot of women your age, I want to just like talk about it and just put it out there. Like a big misconception out there is like, once you hit like menopause age, all that happens is that you gain weight and that you can't lose weight. From your own lens and your pure life experience, tell us a little more about that.
I mean, shoot, 40, I always tell people, right? 46, I'm like wine, baby. I'm getting finer with age, right? Yeah, I just think that's it's a misconception that we've been taught our whole life. Like, get skinny in your 20s because that's when it's the easiest to do it, right? Your metabolism's faster, you have more energy. Oh, it's just going to get, as you go into your 30s, right? And you're always taught like when you hit 30, all of a sudden something shifts and it changes, right? And I bought into it, like, and it becomes an excuse, right? Like, oh, I hit my 30s, my metabolism changed, the fat on my body has, it's shifted to different places. Oh, I used to be able to run, I used to be able to work out, 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and I could maintain my body. Like all the things that society teaches us about getting older as women is like a constant hammer. Like you can't, oh, you better do all this before you hit 40. Like, I'm like, Jesus, God, getting old is going to blow, right? Like, but also, as you get older, you also become a little bit wiser, right? And, I would say that, I certainly bought into all of those things about getting older, right? And I allowed them to be excuses for why I couldn't, shouldn't, didn't, wouldn't. I mean, think of anything that has, a contraction in it and add it to something. All of those things I bought into because, you get bombarded with it. And then if you don't educate yourself that that's not exactly the truth, are there some things that are different in my 40s? Absolutely. Like, not that this is my thing, and this is a shout out to my buddy Mel, right? Like, I'm not going to sit there and, say that eating, 4 pieces of chocolate cake isn't going to affect me differently than it did in my 20s. That's the truth. It does. I'm not eating cake like that, but, so some of the things are true, but that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that we can do things that combat that, right? And that's about the learning, right? Open yourself up to going beyond what society tells you can and can't do, and learn for yourself exactly what it is you can do, right? And you will do. And, that's a journey in and of itself, right? Like, we get fed these things throughout our life from different people and different sources until you stop and say, well, shit, why do I keep listening to all of this? How about it's high time I find out exactly really what I'm capable of and what I can do. Do I wish I got to this point a little bit sooner?
I love it. It's so true. I think it's accountability and ownership. Like, yes, physiologically things happen, but just because something becomes a little bit more difficult doesn't mean that you're doomed. And people just give up as soon as they, see that something is not easy or fast or quick. It's like, this is not meant for me. And it's just the society that we live in. And it's just so frustrating for any high performer because you're being fed these lies that weight loss is not for you if you're at the age of 45 or like 50. Like, so many people just give up on themselves. It's like, okay, I might as well just go to the grave with that. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Like, you're only 45. Like, for a fit, healthy person, it's like you're not even halfway through and like you've already given up on yourself. It's really frustrating and it's really sad. So I'm really glad that you shed light on it from your own personal experience.
I have a question, but first, I think that some people get so far disconnected from where they want to be that they start to lose hope because the journey seems so daunting.
Yes.
Right. So it's like the more we fall into that, the further away from where we want to be we get. And then it gets more and more overwhelming to where it's like hard to even try to get started. Right. So now you heard about it and you're like, this is where I need to be. A lot of people will like hesitate for a really long time and beat around the bush. You felt it in your gut. They'll feel it in their gut. I need to do this, but something scares them. Either their fear that they're not going to follow through, their fear that it's going to be something like something else that they've tried and they're going to lose the results afterwards and then waste more money. Their fear of the money itself. even if it may exist somewhere that they can get their hands on it, whatever it is. Maybe, you know, they don't have a supportive spouse or something, that they don't approve of, you know, them jumping into something like that. What do you like? Has there been anything that's really like that you have felt held back by within yourself? Any kind of fear? Or what do you think is like the reason why a lot of people just don't, like, when they know that something's right, don't go for it?
I mean, I can only speak for myself, but, you know, in conversations that I've had with other people, I think and again, I'm only going to speak about, I think for a lot of women, and I gather this from what I do for a living as well, I think the overriding theme is that they don't think they're worthy. They don't think they're worthy of the investment, the time, something that's occurred in our lives have told us that we're not worthy, or we're not allowed, or we need to be doing something else. We need to have that investment in something else. I think that's a very common theme for women, because we're natural nurturers, we're mothers, right? And so we often put ourselves dead last. And there's, you know, society that tells us that as well, right? Well, you're a mom, you need to take care of your kid. You're a wife, you need to make sure you're there for your, you know, your partner. You know, you are whatever occupation you're in, so you have to give that time to your job. And so as we're putting all this worth and time in all these other entities, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, right? All those things are an important part of our lives, but then what we don't do is invest that same time, energy, effort, money, pick an adjective, into ourselves. And then we wonder why we're running on empty, right? And that's the best way to put it, right? We start running on empty. We're empty of energy. We become empty of emotion, right? Because eventually it gets to us and we just start doing this, right? I like to call it the emotional flat line. We're not exceptionally happy and we're not exceptionally low. We're just at that, you know, feeling any kind of emotion becomes difficult because we don't make that investment in ourselves. So my number one thing would be, we need to recognize that we're worthy of the time, the investment, and the energy in ourselves, so that we can give to our wives, our kids, you know, whatever it is that we do for work, more wholeheartedly, right? Because if we don't, then everything gets a quarter of what we are, right? They get a quarter of all of that, when, you know, they can get so much more and we get so much more, right? It's like a win-win. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah. So then that makes me think of, like, okay, the Mel, let's say before the inner circle, had you decided, you know, to believe that you're not worthy, and then not jump into it, where would you be now? And how much do you think you would be helping out your family and your loved ones and all these other obligations that we feel so, you know, like we have to do all of these things first, and then I'm the bottom of the barrel. Where would that Mel be had she not done the inner circle versus where you are now? And is there, and what is, if so, the difference in how much you're able to give and help and provide for all the other obligations that you have?
That's a loaded question, Erin. You know, I mean, the simple answer to where would I be had I not found the inner circle would be in the same place I was before I hit the inner circle, right? Like, you know, I would have just been content with, maybe content's not even the word. I would have lived the life that I was living, because in that moment, I felt like when I was in it, it was everything that I wanted it to be, right? Because I didn't know anything different. Yes, was I lacking energy? Sure. But again, you know, society tells you, okay, well, you know, as you're getting older, you have all these, you know, responsibilities. Of course, you're going to be more tired, right? Of course, you're going to be more, you know, sore, right? Like, oh shit, if I work out, you know, my body's getting older, so it's definitely going to be sore, right? So I wouldn't, you know, I would, you know, we talk about mundaneville, but it's so different in that regard. Like, I would have just been living the motions of my life, right? And going through the motions. And the difference is that, you know, now that listen, that first month of the inner circle, I might as well have, you know, thrown my money out the window. And that's just an honest statement, right? You know, I signed up and we had the call and I was gung ho. And then I was like, oh shit. And I think the part of it was I'm accountable to something, right? Someone's literally checking in with me.
But that one of the reasons why you decided to do it is because you needed that.
Yes, but when you're in it, right, it's hard, right? And for someone who kind of doesn't like to be out there, and that's kind of changed a little bit, but for someone who doesn't like to be out there, I was like, I'm going to hide on this, right? Let me not check in. Let me not do it, you know? And then, you know, like I got hit with the lupus diagnosis, right? And I was in a dark spot, right? Because I was already not that well engaged. And then that just threw me for, you know, I'll call it a little bit of a black hole. And when I say that, like, I wasn't like horribly depressed or, you know, feeling any sort of way like that, but it was a make or break for me, because then I was like, now I really have a lot of excuses, right? Now I can really justify every excuse that I could possibly think of, because, woe is me, I have lupus. And make no mistake, the shit hurts, right? Like, you know, some days I wake up and I feel like I have razor blades in my feet and it hurts, right? Like, there's just no way of getting around that. But in the beginning, I was thinking of every way I could use it as an excuse, as opposed to looking at the lessons it was going to teach me, and really just lessons about myself, right? And that's where the mindset came in. That's when I really started working on my mindset, because it was really hard for me to do the workouts, right? And I did allow myself to, when I say use it as an excuse, I did allow myself to not be as principled as I normally would. Because I had that as my bumper. But I was doing the work on my head. And so that's why, like, I speak so eloquently about changing your mind, leading to changing the physical manifestation of that. And that's when I started reading the 4 Agreements, and The Path Made Clear was kind of during that process. And, you know, instead of it changed my focus on, you know, the woe is me, because I did it, like, oh, poor me. And I did. And I changed that to, okay, what is the gift in this new problem? What can I gain from that? And as I started to look at the gifts, and kind of simultaneously, I had gotten the ENS journal, which is a godsend. I am not a journaler at all, right? Never have been. I find it hard to.
Look at that journal if you have it.
It's here you go. This is what my journal looks like every day. For Sarik, it's this picture of all this stuff. Yeah, see, look, people know. It's truly like I have other journal books. I do, but it's so it's easy. It's easy to journal in this book. It's very concise, and I've added things to it like an affirmation and stuff like that I've added my own kind of thing. But when you think about goals, your targets to hit them, and what your gratitude is, and let me tell you something, gratitude has completely changed how I look at things. It is, when I say it is the number one thing that shifted me from woe is me to, excuse my language, fuck the lupus and all of the shit that comes with it. It really started with gratitude, right? It started with how can I, if I talk about what I'm grateful for every single day, every single morning, I write that down, 5 o'clock in the morning. If I start my day that way, it's really, really difficult if you really talk about gratitude and feel it to have a bad day. Now, that doesn't mean that things don't come along, that kind of, shift things. But if you start your day in that place of gratitude and being grateful for what you do have, what you can do, it's hard to go throughout the day and not feel like you're going to win it, right? It's just, it's hard, right? You consciously have to think of something negative or something bad to flip your script if you start your day with gratitude. So having that as kind of my basis really started to change my mindset about the feeling that I have when I wake up every morning, right? Because I wake up and I can feel the pain, right? Like it's there. It's not going away. But what shifted is what am I going to do about it, right? And it was a slow shift. It would be like, okay, first there's no way I was getting up and working out, right? Like it was not happening. And then it kind of shifted to, okay, let me wake up, evaluate where I'm at. And if I need to do some self-care, I'll do some self-care, right? And then I'll get to my workout. Well, the problem with that is I have a busy day. So I was trying to figure out ways to squeeze that shit in places that I really didn't have, but I did get to it. And then my final shift has just been, and this is my kind of 4th or 5th day of it, is just waking up and getting to it, because I'm not allowing my brain to process, how my body's feeling. I just get up, I put my clothes on, and I get to it. And man, it's been fantastic. So all those shifts, right? It's like my brain hasn't registered yet how my body really feels. It just hasn't. And so it's ready to go. And so just kind of those small shifts have really, really been helpful, because I like to work out first thing, right? It gets me going. I don't want to wait until 10, 11, 12. Like that's not something that's, while it's productive for me, I'd rather just do it in the morning and be done. So even that small shift has made such a difference, right? And it doesn't even seem like it's that much, right? Like it's just a tiny little shift in how I approach things. And it really just started with my mindset. It had nothing to do with how I feel physically.
Small things over time add up big time. What would you say was the biggest lesson that you've learned so far from your journey within the inner circle?
I mean, I'm going to steal something from my buddy. I don't think she's on here right now. Taylor, I didn't see her pop up, but.
That'll work.
You're not stealing, you're giving credit where credit is due.
She knows I wouldn't steal from her, but change your mindset, change your life, right? If you She is? Yay! I didn't see her. Okay, Taylor, thank you. I use that quite frequently now. It's the God's honest truth, right? If you just change small things in your mind at a time, right? You're not going to make these huge, like, bounding leaps in your mindset. It's just small things that you can do every day, right? And I think you guys talk about it on your other espressos, like just flip the script, right? And practice on the little things, practice on the small things, just flipping the script a little bit. And when it gets to the bigger things and the harder things, doing it in the small things makes it so much easier, right? So that is the one thing that I would say, right? Yes, we all came on here. We all want to be a part. We all want to lose weight. We want to look better. We want to have, guns. We want to have abs of steel. We want to have Sarit's abs, like we have all these things that we want physically, but if you can have all those things, but it takes time, it takes sustainability, and the only way you sustain those things is if you work on your mindset. It doesn't happen any other way.
So good. Okay, so like you've dropped some names here. Like, let's talk about the connections that you've made from the inner circle and the value.
I mean, the inner
circle you're afraid of.
Say that again.
You gained even more of what you were afraid of initially, which is called accountability.
Yeah, being on the inner circle, right? When you kind of you talk to people every week, and then, right, you're getting accountability buddies, so you're being more intense with some of the people, when you have inner circle calls, sometimes things get really deep on those calls, right? People share some very deep personal things, and there's no way to not feel bonded in that, right? Because it's sacred. When someone trusts you with those types of things, it's a sacred feeling. It's actually an honor, right? That people are willing to put themselves out there and talk about some of the things that they do. So, it's hard not to form relationships out of that. But, I'm going to shamelessly plug the live, because I know you guys are having another one. What really, really sealed it was meeting these fantastic women in person. And that is the God's, when we were doing our video at the end, what was the one thing that really, was one of the biggest takeaways or the biggest impacts from being at the live? It was sharing those same things in a much more intimate setting and being tactile with people, right? Video is great. It's great for communication. You can see people, but having that, right? Here we go. Proximity is power, right? Being close to people who are like-minded or at that step above you that drive you to be better than you are, there's no replacement for it. And it's intense. And, people may say, oh, it was only, 3 or 4 days. Let me tell you something. 3 or 4 days, you didn't, we would have all loved to have stayed there longer for sure. But that's really all we needed. Like I said, we have this group, we have a 10Xer group on our chat, right? Every day we talk to each other and we send silly stuff, and we're accountable. We food pictures and there's no recreation of that anywhere else than there is here.
Oh, that is a blessing.
It is a blessing, yes.
So,
can I get an amen?
Amen.
Who wants another live? Raise your hand. Who wants another live?
y'all better come to this live, because a bunch of you said, oh, I want to come, and then you ended up not coming. Integrity.
Do it. It will change everything.
You don't have to, but you will have FOMO.
I want to ask you, where are you going next in life?
Ooh. I mean, I could be, cliche in general and say onward and upward, right? Like, but that's the absolute truth, right? Like, I really feel like the sky is my limit now, right? And, the one thing that I'll say the other thing that I took away from the live event was this is really about honing in on what living a purposeful life is for me, right? And what it means to live a life of purpose. And I love the work I do, right? I work with people every day and I help people, and that's part of my purpose, right? There is nothing else I would do than that. But there's also parameters on how I can help people just because of, laws, HIPAA. I mean, think about all the things that get in the way of you really helping people. So it fulfills some of my purpose, but not all of it. So, I mean, really what I'm working on, getting my nutrition certification. I can use the tools that I already have in my back pocket from being a therapist. That is something that will always be with me. And so, how I really see myself helping people is really kind of in this kind of environment, right? I feel like I have, a lot of experiences, a lot of gifts that I can give people that will help them along in their journey. People do things because they're inspired, right? People follow you, Erin and Sarit, because they feel inspired by you, right? And that's half the battle, right? If you don't feel inspired by somebody, I mean, the chances of you following with them and sticking through with it is slim to none, right? There has to be some sort of personal connection there where you feel like this person, these people are invested in my successful outcome. And, my hope is to be able to do that for people as well. Now, I don't know the vehicle in which I'm going to do it, although I have some sneaky ideas, but I see kind of like tie-ins for me, right? Like the nutrition part, right? I love to cook. I said it yesterday, if I wasn't a therapist, I would have been a chef. I love to cook. I love being in that kind of environment. So I feel like I could tie all of those things together, right? Being educated about nutrition, the love of cooking, wanting to help people. And then I think the fourth thing is, really, you talked about it this morning on your thing, how food is medicine. And that's 100 times more true for people who have conditions like me, right? So, I kind of feel like all of those things have come together in this journey that's where my purpose is going to be. And I really feel that. I don't have all of the, everything figured out, but that's where I think it is. And I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, right? Because I was just rolling along with what I was doing. But I really, like, when I talk about it, when you feel that in your like heart and in your gut, like when you say, oh, this is what I want to do, and it makes you smile, that it's right? When you feel that feeling. So I know that that's right. And that's kind of where my shift will be. That's kind of where I see myself going from here.
I love it. And, you know, the interesting thing is that nobody actually has it figured out. And the people who actually have it figured out are probably the ones who are just stuck in the rat race, who need to take a minute to start figuring it out. So you're in a beautiful place, and that's a great place to be in. To wrap this up, you know, like, let's say somebody listens to this recording on YouTube or on podcast, and they're like, man, like I'm ready for a change, or I can relate to like Melanie so much. Like, I feel like life has taken a toll on me. Like, what do I do now? Like, what would you recommend to them?
Reach out and lean in, right? There are so many avenues that people can reach out to, you know, your pages, YouTube, you know, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, the possibilities and the ways to get in touch with you guys are endless. But I think the one big thing I would say, and I touched on this earlier, right, is, you know, when we're in that contemplative stage about whether or not we can make that investment, or we have the time to make that investment, or, you know, will my partner or my spouse be supportive of it? All the things that go through our head, we're in that contemplative state, right? Like, oh, I feel in my gut, I know I should do this, as I go back to what I was saying earlier. And that's just know that you're worthy of the investment that you're going to make in being here. That to me is like key, right? Because if you can feel that, right, if you can feel like you're worthy, then you're going to take that next step. But if you don't, that next step's going to be really, really hard. So just know that you're worth every investment that you're going to put in making your life more healthy, making your life more wealthy, and, you know, all the great things that come with the investment that you're getting ready to make. So worthiness, just remember, when you have that feeling, know that you're worthy.
Word of the day, worthiness. I love it. Do you have anything else to add or add?
No, I'm just grateful for you being here. Like we always say, trusting us. It's so hard in this world, in online platforms, in this industry, dear God. You know, so I'm super grateful that you were willing to give us your time, and help inspire other people. I'm grateful all you guys showed up to be inspired. And that is all I have to say. Oof.
Oof.
Yes. All right, you guys. Well, that being said, as we're heading on to another badass weekend, just remember that you are worthy. So you better make...
I have one more thing to say. If you are interested in help and you're like, gosh, I just don't know what next step to take, just email me at erin@erinandsarit.com and open the conversation. That's it. That's what I have to say.
And remember that you are worthy of it. And you guys, we're wishing you a weekend worth of beautiful memories, time well spent. Remember that by the end of the day, the most limited resource that you guys have is time. So do epic things for yourself, for others, and Melanie O'Connor and the entire crew. We love you guys. Have a beautiful weekend. We'll catch you guys on Monday. Peace.